Good afternoon, I'm Bakhtiar Sonov and you are watching AnewZ. Let's see the top stories shaping our world. A powerful blast hits a chemical plant in eastern China. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov accuses Europe of sabotaging Trump's efforts to mediate the Ukraine war. The United Nations warns of a challenging situation in Sudan. An explosion at a Chinese chemical plant in the eastern province of Shandong has claimed 5 lives, injuring 19, and left 6 others missing. The blast happened just before midday on Tuesday and sent thick smoke into the sky and scattered glass over a kilometer, according to local reports. The plant, established in 2019, produces chemicals for pesticides and pharmaceuticals and employs more than 300 people. Local authorities continue investigating the cause of the explosion. U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth welcomed his Polish counterpart to the Pentagon on Tuesday. Poland's commitment to NATO spending was praised, highlighting closer military cooperation amid Europe's security concerns.
At the Pentagon, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth greeted his Polish counterpart, Władysław Kosiniak-Kamysz, with an honor cordon before their talks on Tuesday. This marks the second meeting between the two countries' top defense officials in 3 months. Hegseth once again called Poland a model ally, commending Warsaw's dedication to spending 5% of its GDP on defense.
The relationship between the United States and Poland is rock solid. Both countries demonstrate peace through strength. President Trump also sends his regards and appreciation for all Polish leadership and the Polish people do. A model ally for the United States. They're on the eastern flank of NATO, and we're going to be encouraging 5%. We don't have to encourage Poland. You are almost there already, leading the way on investment in Europe's largest land army, modernizing that force, and the defense industrial base, which is critically important, not just obviously here in the United States, but in Europe as well.
But clearly, the comments followed NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte's expectation that members will agree to a 5% defense spending target at next month's Hague summit. He also thanked Kosiniak-Kamysz for hosting US troops in Poland. Approximately 10,000 US soldiers are currently stationed in Poland as part of a rotational presence, primarily under the European Deterrence Initiative.
Also, and finally, thank you for your great support.
Meanwhile, Kosiniak-Kamysz said that Europe must take a larger responsibility for its own defense.
Security challenges have become more serious, complex, and interconnected than ever before. That's why we fully support President Donald Trump's administration's efforts to achieve a just and lasting peace in Ukraine. We are sure, and our broad defense cooperation is the best proof that the United States of America remains the guarantor of global stability and development. I'm also certain that it was necessary to send Europe a strong message, a strong signal for burden sharing within NATO, recognizing that Europe must take greater responsibility for its own defense.
The two countries plan to expand cooperation from arms purchases to joint military production, with US investors soon visiting Poland to explore opportunities. They also confirmed the first 8 Apache helicopters from a $10 billion US contract are scheduled to arrive in Poland on the 16th of June. Hegseth also stressed Warsaw's role in advancing the European Union's security action for Europe. This initiative allows 35% of joint defense procurements to be made with allies outside Europe, benefiting both Poland and the US.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov says Moscow is ready to resume peace talks with Ukraine once both sides exchange written proposals. Lavrov made the remarks after meeting Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan. Fidan, during a two-day visit to Moscow, also met President Vladimir Putin to discuss the developments after recent direct talks between Russia and Ukraine in Istanbul. Both ministers reaffirmed support for a negotiated end to the war.
President Trump is a person who wants a result, and when he sees that his efforts to promote the settlement as they agreed with the Russian President Putin, including the meeting in Istanbul, including the accord to exchange memorandums between Russia and Ukraine, which will contain not just baseless demands as a smokescreen for continuation of aggressive anti-Russian policy, but the specific components for solution of the issue aimed at elimination of the root causes. And when Trump sees that a small group of the European representatives starts to sabotage his efforts, pushing Ukraine toward absolutely reckless actions like drone attacks on Moscow and other our cities, and attacks on the helicopter of the Russian president, of course he may reveal certain emotions.
Tensions between Washington and Moscow are escalating once again as President Donald Trump signals a new wave of sanctions against Russia. This comes amid growing frustration over President Vladimir Putin's military campaign in Ukraine and the sluggish pace of peace negotiations. Joining us now to unpack these developments is Rudolf Mihovich, Chief Executive Officer of Christian Medical Association. Mr. Mihovich, welcome to the program. Mr. Mihovich, how significant are these sanctions likely to be, and what impact might they have on Russia's war strategy?
So here in Ukraine, we are not expecting a big sanctions from US because we obviously see that Trump doesn't have will to counterattack Putin. Mm-hmm. Even in his last message on Truth Social, he was angry on Putin, but at the same time, made a statement about President Zelensky. So he's trying to threaten Putin, but at the same time threatening Zelensky. So we are not really optimistic about sanctions from US, but we'll see. There's talks maybe through the senators that already more than 80 of them are ready to sign a new sanction, a huge sanction package, 500% tariffs on countries that are supporting Russia. So if it would happen, it would be a significant impact on Russia, because Russia is benefit for this year from oil, gas, and other more than 230 billion. That's why Putin is so strong in his communication. He doesn't care about opinion of Trump or European Union. He has a lot of money to have a war. So he will continue on this. He has those money.
So could this move by Trump complicate or accelerate the peace talks between Ukraine and Russia?
If sanction will happen, it might help. But again, I think Putin is quite sure in his allies such as China. More than 80% of support or supplies in turning out of sanction comes from China or through China, better to say. So they have a very strong relationship between Putin and Xi Jinping. So that might probably solve to continue the war. I think better support or better action will be military support to Ukraine, more rockets, more strength. This only communication or language that Putin will understand. Other languages are not related to it. He already said we are not afraid of sanctions. We have a lot.
Rudolf Mihovich, thank you so much for your time and your insights. We truly appreciate your expertise.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. The European Union has approved the creation of a 150 billion euros arms fund amid growing phases of a possible Russian attack on the region and doubts over Washington's security commitments to the continent. The measure was backed by 26 of the EU's 27 member countries, with Hungary abstaining.
The European Commission has given the green light for a monetary loan scheme to member states for collaborative defence projects. The Security Action for Europe scheme, known as SAFE, was first proposed in March, as concerns deepened that the US, under President Donald Trump, might not come to Europe's defence if needed. This scheme is designed to strengthen the EU defence industry, with an emphasis on cross-border projects and buying European supplies and arms. The measure was backed by 26 of the EU's 27 countries, with Hungary abstaining. Since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022, EU countries have already increased defence spending by more than 30%. But leaders say it's still not enough. Moscow has criticised the initiative as fueling war, based on what it calls an invented threat. But many in Europe note that Russia made similar claims before launching its assault on Ukraine. The SAFE Fund signals a new era in European defence, one that is united, armed, and prepared for a future without guarantees.
Families of hostages gathered in Tel Aviv to mark 600 days since the start of the Gaza war on Wednesday. The emotional event featured a symbolic formation and urgent calls for international help as the conflict between Israel and Hamas continues.
On a Tel Aviv beach, families and activists created a large yellow ribbon to honour those still held captive in Gaza. It marks 600 days since the war began, and many of the participants accuse the Israeli government of neglecting the hostages and demand immediate global action. Families also say the pain of waiting continues to weigh heavily.
Today marks 600 days. 600 days since 58 innocent people were kidnapped by Hamas and dragged into the tunnels of Gaza. 600 days of darkness, 600 days without freedom, 600 days of abandonment. The hostages, our family members, have endured horrific, inhumane conditions. The longer they remain underground, the more danger they face, and this suffering extends beyond them. The people of Gaza are victims too, held hostage by Hamas rule and the extended, sad war.
We cry out to President Trump, you are the only one who can act to stop the vengeance war and ensure the return of all, both the living for rehabilitation and the fallen for burial. Know this, Mr. President, we are the majority of the people, the majority who say that returning the hostages is the first priority, a part of stopping the death and suffering on both sides. Use your power and determination to achieve peace and bring our loved ones home.
Hamas says it is ready to release all remaining hostages and agree to a permanent ceasefire if Israel withdraws completely from Gaza. Israel has rejected the offer, insisting the war must continue until Hamas is dismantled. Meanwhile, Hamas has called for global protests from the 30th of May to the 1st of June to take action against the ongoing violence and blockade in Gaza. Since the 2nd of March, Israel has blocked food, medical and humanitarian aid from entering Gaza, worsening the humanitarian crisis. This has raised international concern and calls for urgent relief and a ceasefire.
The situation in Sudan is rapidly deteriorating. According to the latest statement from the United Nations, the ongoing armed conflict, mass displacement and the spread of infectious diseases are deepening the humanitarian crisis in the country. UN officials are calling for urgent international intervention.
The humanitarian crisis in Sudan is deepening day by day. United Nations spokesperson Stefan Dujarric said at a press briefing in New York that ongoing armed clashes, mass displacement of people, and the rapid spread of diseases are further worsening the situation in the country.
North Darfur State artillery shelling continues to impact residential areas of El Fasher in the Abu Shuk camp for internally displaced people. Local sources report daily civilian casualties, and recent days has seen an intensification of bombardments at night.
The situation in South Kordofan is no different. Recent fighting has forced nearly 2,800 people, mostly women and children, to flee from the town of Dibabad. These displaced individuals are now scattered across the Al-Quoz area and other parts of West Kordofan, living in extremely difficult conditions. Their access to basic necessities, such as shelter, medical care and protection, is severely limited.
The situation in the state capital, Kadugli, has also been very seriously deteriorating in recent weeks, with intense shelling and humanitarian access largely cut off. In northern state, authorities report that about 6,000 people who fled from North Darfur, Khartoum, and West Kordofan due to insecurity arrived in Daba in northern state between the 12th and 22nd of May. Meanwhile, a cholera outbreak in Khartoum state is worsening at an alarming rate, we are told. Our humanitarian partners in the state report an 80% increase in suspected cases over the past 2 weeks, bringing the total number of cases to more than 8,500.
Dujarric noted that with the approaching rainy season, the United Nations and its partners have pre-positioned 30,000 tons of aid supplies in warehouses located in Jenaina, Nyala, and Tawila. These supplies are intended to support humanitarian operations across the Kordofan and Darfur regions. Meanwhile, aid deliveries to West and Central Darfur will be facilitated through cross-border corridors from Chad. However, the crisis in Sudan is not limited to physical insecurity. There is also a growing education emergency. According to the UN, 250,000 children in North Darfur alone, 250,000, have lost access to schooling. Across the country, millions of children are currently unable to attend school. The UN urges the international community to provide more flexible, timely, and large-scale financial support for the humanitarian response. It also emphasized the urgent need for unhindered access along all necessary routes so that aid workers can reach people in need without obstruction.
Azerbaijan marks its Independence Day with the symbolic opening of Lachen International Airport, attended by the leaders of Azerbaijan, Turkey and Pakistan. Our Orkan Amashov has more on this.
Very good afternoon to you all from the Lachen district of the East Zangezur economic region of Azerbaijan. Today, on the 28th of May, on Azerbaijan's Independence Day, the opening ceremony of Lachen International Airport is taking place with the participation of Azerbaijani and Turkish presidents and also the Prime Minister of Pakistan. It's a very important day. Symbolism is obvious, 28th of May. Location also exudes symbolism. Lachen is a very important part of Azerbaijani national identity. Quite often over the past 3 decades, this particular territory was associated with loss, with the loss of sovereignty over these territories. And then, of course, Azerbaijan recovered its territorial integrity and as of 2020, Lachen symbolizes the part and parcel of a new Azerbaijan. Just allow me to introduce a couple of important facts about this international airport. Its foundational stone was laid back in August 2021, and it is the highest altitude airport within the scope of Azerbaijan. It is the third airport built in the territories over which Azerbaijan recovered its sovereignty, territorial integrity as of 2020. And also, of course, it's strategically located. It's not far away by virtue of being located in the Lachen district, of course, not far away from the conditional Azerbaijani-Armenian border. It is actually 30 kilometers away from the city of Lachen itself. And as I mentioned earlier, it's the third airport built in this part of Azerbaijan. And of course, also there is a massively important geopolitical factor that needs to be taken into account. Prime Minister of Pakistan is visiting Azerbaijan as part of his broader regional trip. Azerbaijan's third stop within this tour. Earlier it was in Iran and Turkey. And many analysts regard this trip as part of his gratitude to these 3 countries that have supported Pakistan in the context of its confrontation with India. And also, of course, President of Turkey just landed, and there will be a trilateral meeting involving 3 leaders. Azerbaijan, Pakistan and Turkey have cultivated over the past 3-4 decades strategically vital relations, and the first actually attempt to properly institutionalize this trilateral format was made back in 2017. And last year, in early July, on the sidelines of the 24th meeting of the heads of state of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, trilateral meeting involving the leaders of Azerbaijan, Turkey and Pakistan took place, and therefore within the confines of today's agenda, some of the contours of that very meeting will be elaborated further. We confidently expect to hear some declarations, some statements, and therefore the wider geopolitical significance of this meeting taking place today in Laçın on the 28th of May, Independence Day of Azerbaijan, is incredibly important indeed. Orkun Amashov, AnewZ.
The fall of empires creates windows of possibility and peril. In the shadow of the Russian Empire's collapse, the South Caucasus briefly reimagined its future through bold experiments in independence. This is the story of how fragile dreams lay the groundwork for lasting nations.
In the final decades of the Russian Empire, the South Caucasus was home to a mosaic of nationalities: Armenians, Georgians, and Azerbaijanis, each with distinct identities but living under centralized Russian control. The 1917 Russian Revolution shattered that control, unleashing a power vacuum and a scramble for self-determination. As the Bolsheviks seized power in the north and the Ottoman Empire advanced from the west, the South Caucasus became a geopolitical crossroads, torn between collapsing empires, foreign invasions, and rising internal tensions. After the collapse of the Russian Empire, a short-lived attempt to unify the South Caucasus emerged. The Transcaucasian Democratic Federative Republic, declared in April 1918. But fundamental differences between Georgia, Armenia, and Azerbaijan in national goals, foreign policy, and positions toward the Ottomans and Bolsheviks led to its rapid collapse. By May, the federation dissolved, with Georgia the first to withdraw. Influential Georgian political and intellectual groups did not acknowledge Soviet power, which was established in Russia after the revolution of 1917. In Georgia, the path to independence began with a national convention in Tbilisi in November 1917. The National Council of Georgia was elected, and on 26 May 1918, the Democratic Republic of Georgia was proclaimed. Led by the Menshevik Noe Ramishvili, Georgia quickly built democratic institutions. The 1919 elections brought a multi-party parliament with protections for minorities, women's rights, and even the abolition of the death penalty in its first constitution, adopted on 21st February 1921. But just 4 days later, under cannon fire, the Red Army invaded, and on 25th February, Georgia was annexed by Soviet forces. The Azerbaijan Democratic Republic was declared just 2 days after Georgia, on 28 May 1918, in Tbilisi, because Baku was under Soviet control at the time. The city was governed by Sovnarkom, the highest executive authority of the Soviet republics. This was followed by the brief rule of the Central Caspian dictatorship that replaced the Baku Commune after the July coup of 1918. Meanwhile, the Azerbaijani National Council, led by Mamad Amin Rasulzadeh of the Musavat Party, governed from Ganja. On 15 September 1918, Ottoman and Azerbaijani forces entered Baku in the decisive Battle of Baku, liberating the city and restoring it as the capital. Azerbaijan went on to become the first secular parliamentary republic in the Muslim East. The republic lasted only 23 months, until 28 April 1920, when Red Army entered Baku, and Azerbaijan was incorporated into the Soviet Union. Armenia also declared independence on 28 May 1918. Led by the Armenian Revolutionary Federation, known as Dashnaks, the First Republic of Armenia emerged in the midst of war, famine, and displacement. The Batum Treaty in June 1918 forced Armenia to cede 20,000 square kilometers to the Ottomans. Aram Manoukian, widely regarded as the founding father of the Republic, played a vital role in repelling Ottoman advances and stabilizing the state under extreme conditions. But without unity or strong defenses, Armenia became vulnerable to outside threats. By December 1920, it fell to the Bolsheviks and became the Armenian Soviet Socialist Republic. Despite lasting barely 2 years, the first South Caucasus republics laid enduring foundations. They established currencies, universities and constitutions, promoted native languages, and supported the development of theatre, literature and music. Yerevan State University was founded in 1919. In Azerbaijan, Baku State University opened the same year. Young Republic of Azerbaijan granted women full voting rights, ahead of many Western nations. In Georgia, women entered parliament and helped draft the first constitution. Armenian banknotes, printed in Armenian, Russian and French, symbolized sovereignty. At the Paris Peace Conference, South Caucasus leaders sought international recognition. US President Woodrow Wilson acknowledged their aspirations, though global powers prioritized stability over new borders. "We do not want to divide the world into small pieces," Wilson told the Azerbaijani delegation. Yet for the peoples of the South Caucasus, unity proved impossible. Still, their brief independence shaped national identities, launched institutions, and created symbols that re-emerged after 1991, when these nations finally reclaimed the independence first imagined in 1918.
Kazakhstan is looking to learn from China's experience in nuclear and water environmental safety. This was a major topic during talks about Kazakhstan's first nuclear power plant. Our Fariza Kalimurzina has the details.
Kazakhstan expressed interest in studying China's experience in ensuring nuclear and water environmental safety at all stages of the project implementation. The chairman of the Atomic Energy Agency of Kazakhstan met with the Deputy Minister of Ecology of China and head of the National Nuclear Safety Administration. The parties discussed prospects for cooperation in the nuclear energy sector, particularly the country's first nuclear power plant project, the development of the nuclear fuel cycle and the strengthening of the scientific and technical base. Currently, preparations for construction are actively underway. A short list of potential technology suppliers has been formed, which includes 4 international corporations: China's CNNC with its reactor, Russia's Rosatom, South Korea's KCNP, and France EDF. The first Kazakh nuclear power plant with a capacity of 2.4 gigawatts is planned to be built in Almaty region. New power transmission lines will be required to connect the plant to the power grid. The project may be financed through export credits and loans from international financial organizations. The decision on the choice of the partner company is expected before the end of the first half of the year. Initially, this was planned for the end of 2022, but the dates have been postponed several times. The final decision was delayed until after the Republican referendum held in October 2024. More than 71% of Kazakhstanis supported the construction of the nuclear power plant. According to the preliminary estimates by Li Diyong, Deputy Chief Representative of the Chinese National Nuclear Corporation, the cost of 1.2 gigawatt power unit may amount to about $2.73 billion. Accordingly, if the construction is entrusted to China's CNNC, the total cost of the 2-unit station will reach approximately $5.47 billion. The project is expected to take about 5 years to complete, with the nuclear power plant scheduled to be commissioned in 2035. Fariza Kalimurzina, AnewZ, in Almaty, Kazakhstan.
Kazakhstan has chaired the inaugural meeting of the Organization of Turkic States Central Banks Council. The council aims to deepen collaboration on key financial issues such as monetary policy, financial technologies, and the evolution of digital currencies and assets. To help us understand the implications of this meeting for regional financial integration and the broader economic landscape, we are joined by Nurbolat Nushambayev, an expert in international relations from Almaty, Kazakhstan. Mr. Nushambayev, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Hello.
Mr. Nushambayev, how significant is the establishment of the OTS Central Banks Council in terms of regional monetary and financial cooperation?
I think establishment of this organization, it's one of the great steps, the first step creating toward enhanced common financial system among the Turkic state organization states. It will create a foundation of the common currencies, and it will surely minimize all the additional tasks, additional reforms within the member states. So therefore, I think this step definitely, within the period of geopolitical turbulence, will create alternative financial system, which has a long way to go since establishment.
So what potential do you see for unified or interoperable digital currency frameworks among Turkic states?
I think digital currencies, it's one of the top priority at this moment within this member states. So therefore, creating common platform for digital strategies, it will surely accelerate common trades, and it will remove extra barriers. So for the long term, I think one of the most must-have important aspect is the trust among the member states. The second is being able alternative way for trade. We can call it de-dollarization within this platform. So it's actually more than 200 million population. So therefore, this step, it will create a wider platform for the future to create common digital currencies. I think it's pretty similar early 2000 European Union when they declared about the euros. So it's time to talk about digital currencies within the Turkic state organizations, member states.
Mr. Nushambayev, how might the Council help member states collectively respond to global economic shocks or inflationary pressures?
I think this question is more political than economic. So first of all, to respond to sanctions and economic pressures from external part, so Turkic state organizations, member states, they should have common economic interest, common political vision. Then I think it will be even better to set up the common economic visions towards the future. In this case, I think it will create one of the kind of heavyweight economic bloc in Eurasian context.
Mr. Nushambayev, thank you so much for your valuable insights. We appreciate your time. Georgian authorities have apprehended Georgi Bachiashvili, a former aide to billionaire and ex-Prime Minister Bidzina Ivanishvili. Bachiashvili, who fled the country earlier this year, was detained near the southern border with Armenia and Azerbaijan. He had been sentenced to in absentia to 11 years in prison for allegedly misappropriating over $800 million in cryptocurrency from Ivanishvili's investment fund. Bachiashvili denies the charges, claiming they are politically motivated on account of his support for Ukraine. Afghanistan is stepping up its diplomatic efforts with 2 delegations dispatched to China and Russia, trying to boost trade and security ties across Asia. Our Tamim Bahiz has more.
Afghanistan is expanding its regional diplomatic outreach, seeking stronger economic and security ties across Asia. In a notable move, the country's acting foreign minister Amir Khan Muttaqi delivered a speech at the 20th Western China International Fair in Chengdu, signaling Kabul's intent to integrate more deeply into regional trade and investment frameworks. Speaking at the opening ceremony of the fair, Minister Muttaqi highlighted Afghanistan's strategic potential, pointing to its untapped natural resources, a youthful population, and key location at the crossroads of Central and South Asia. He said these elements position Afghanistan as a future hub for transit and regional trade. Muttaqi assured international investors that Afghanistan has a secure environment for commerce and that foreign businesses can now operate in Afghanistan with confidence. He also called China a strong economic partner, underscoring its important role in Afghanistan's agriculture, technology and infrastructure development. Meanwhile, in another diplomatic first, Russian media have reported that officials from Kabul will participate in the 13th international meeting of high representatives responsible for security issues, set to take place in Moscow. The conference, taking place from May 27th to 29th, brings together representatives from various regional and international organizations to discuss pressing security issues. With both economic and security engagements on the rise, Afghanistan's leaders are signaling a broader effort to step onto the regional stage, even as the country continues to face international scrutiny over domestic governance and human rights. This is Tamim Bahiz in Kabul for AnewZ.
That's all we have for now. Thank you for watching and stay tuned to AnewZ.